if we can able to harmonize and able to allow the NACADA to be a secretary to the district licensing district committee, it can able to ensure that some funds were ring-fenced and be made available to sensitize the public on the effect of the same. Mr. Speaker, there is a big problem. We have been actually in conversation with the NACADA, and they say majority of this ethanol come across the border, Tanzania and Uganda. And because they say the tariffs are not standardized, Mr. Speaker. In Tanzania, there is no taxes, there is no actually excess duty, it is zero. In Uganda across, it's half. So it makes it easier for the dealers of this ethanol to bring them in the country. I think it's a conversation that we should be discussing, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that there is standard tariffs across the East African bloc so that we can able to control the influx of ethanol in the country. Mr. Speaker, as I complete, I say the issue of control of ethanol and substance abuse should be a concerted effort of all of us and actually the majority stakeholders. There is something, Mr. Speaker, that the cabs, there were the NACADA people at some point, we had a conversation, and I was saying, normally when ethanol is exported into the country, it comes as a commercial for production of spirits, the sanitizers, and the rest. But the rogue suppliers divert it for human consumption. Maybe we should also bring conversation whether this can be denatured so that it becomes so bitter, it cannot be used for consumption. Mr. Speaker, that is the response, and I wanted also to add the same. And I'm really sorry to our Member of Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Jerry, order, honorable members. Order, the conversations are too loud. Jerry.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I would like to thank the Chair of the Departmental Committee for the very detailed response in regard to the deaths that happened in Kirinyaga County. Honorable Speaker, perhaps as a follow-up, I would like to know, there were more than 1,200 crates that went missing, and I would want to know whether they have been located or what is the status of the same. Honorable Speaker, I would also like to know how many bars, because I have seen that Roman 9 has indicated that there was a vetting process that was done in conjunction with the county government and other national agencies, allowing for the operation of bars. How many have been allowed to operate after the vetting process? Honorable Speaker, I want to commend the honorable member for raising the issue of...
Chairman, I hope you are listening to the questions being raised. Yes.
I am actually commending him.
Yes.
I want to commend him for raising the issue of introducing the chemical that is mixed with ethanol without changing its industrial component and use of the same. And I believe that is an issue that the committee should take up so that we can also legislate at the national level to ensure that we protect and contain the importation of ethanol and also second-generation alcohol. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Kishugu. Can you give the member for Kishugu the mic? Oh. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me also comment on this matter and appreciate the response by the chair, and also say that though Kirinyaga was hit this time, this is a national problem. And I think one of the areas that should be followed to the letter is on the regulation of the ethanol or methanol, so that it can be traced from the source, so that whoever is found in the country holding an illegal product, then very serious and stern action can be taken. Let me also take this opportunity, though we've also been condoling with the families, to say that us as the registrators from the county, we are ready to support His Excellency the Deputy President in wiping out all the illicit illicit brews from our county and to make our county a working county going forward. Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I really support every other effort that is made towards eradicating illicit brew, not only in Kirinyaga, but in the entire country as a legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Wandai?
Yes, thank you once again, Honorable Speaker.
On the same issue, Wandai, let me give to Oundo first. I know yours is different.
Just 2 minutes.
Oundo?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Once again, let me join my colleagues from Kirinyaga to condole the families who lost their life. And I really want to direct my comments to the chair of the committee. It would emerge, Honorable Speaker, there could be no protocol or regulations rules on how to handle exhibits. The members who died because they consumed probably expired exhibits. Many places in this country, the police says alcohol, be it illicit, be it illegally imported, be it whichever nature. But again, it ends up the same police officers sell that exhibit plus other exhibits, and they find their way into the market, causing untold harm to the people of Kenya. I do want to encourage the committee to seriously have a thorough discussion with the police and the relevant security organs to draw up protocols on how to handle exhibits. For how long should we keep exhibits? Who has got access to the key or the store of the exhibits? With this way, we'll be able to try to stem this harmful consumption of these harmful products. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Wandai?
Yes, the Honorable Speaker, actually, my issue is clearly straightforward. I wanted to seek some guidance from you, especially taking into consideration the very clear provisions of our Constitution. Honorable Speaker, this House has got a central role in the budget-making process, a role that is not ceremonial. The framers of the Constitution, and indeed Kenyans generally, when they adopted the Constitution, had not envisaged a situation where the National Assembly of the Republic of Kenya would turn out to be a mere rubber stamp in the budget-making process. And I want to take you to the Article 95, Subarticle 4, A and B of the Constitution. The National Assembly determines the allocation of national revenue between the levels of government, and so on and so forth. But at B, the National Assembly appropriates funds for expenditure by the national government and other national state organs. Honorable Speaker, as we speak, the budget policy statement, which was tabled in this House last week, is undergoing an examination process. But Honorable Speaker, what is coming out, and this is now becoming a trend which has to be nipped in the bud if the authority of this House is to be restored, that committees of parliament, and especially departmental committees, are being turned into mere bystanders, if not conveyor belts, of the wishes of the executive. As a matter of fact, what the Constitution requires, and I've spoken, Honorable Speaker, to a number of chairs, and they are very, very disparate. I must say that. I won't name them. They are extremely helpless. What the Constitution envisages is that the national government would simply bring proposals, even if there was some selling, global selling from the National Treasury. That has also to be in consultation with the Parliament. But those proposals are supposed to be subjected to the departmental committees, which then would advise the Budget and Appropriations Committee. It was never envisaged that the executive would come with fixed mind and dictate to departmental committees, to the Budget and Appropriations Committee, on the very crucial matter of budget-making process. And therefore, I want to plead with my sister, Wako, to just be patient. Just be patient, so it doesn't interfere with my thought process. Honorable Speaker, I'm raising this thing early in the day so that you can provide clearer guidance in line with the Constitution and the relevant statutes, especially the Public Finance Management Act, Honorable Speaker, that as we speak, there are ministries that have already declared that monies allocated to their ministries would have to be in this particular manner. That these monies will have to go to these specific functions or roles or purposes that Parliament would only have to rubber stamp. So I want you, to, Honorable Speaker, without really belaboring the point, and I know you can actually give guidance on this matter, so that everybody else gets to understand that this House does not have a mere ceremonial role or duty in the budget-making process. It is actually the House with the powers, the primary powers, to make the budget. I submit, Honorable Speaker.
Majority side. I want a government respondent to that. Naomi Wako, are you turning this House into a rubber stamp?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. It's unfortunate that the minority leader is saying that this great House, this Honorable August House, has been turned to a rubber stamp, which is very unfortunate, and him included, because we passed the finance bill last year, and he's part of the people who passed the bill. It is this House that passed the bill, and today he's accusing members of Parliament to have become rubber stamp. That is very unfortunate. That is not our role. Our role is to do our work, legislate, and represent our people in the best possible way. And again, Honorable Speaker, he has said that the government is dictating. That is not the role of our government. Our government is there to guide the nation. Our government is there to bring development. Our government is there as executive, and it is not there to dictate. And I think our minority leader has not passed the right message to the people. Thank you.
Yes, Milemba. Order, Kajwang, you can't conduct yourself.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The matter raised by the leader of minority is a very serious matter. And me, as a titular follower of the issues that concern budget making and legislation, I would be quick to say that that should never happen if it is happening. Because I'm aware that a number of committees have been meeting, including one which I belong, which is the Debt Committee, and we have been scrutinizing lots of matters concerning budget. I just want to believe that also other committees, and more so, the Budget Committee is doing the same and thoroughly so, without having any direction from any particular field, whether it's a minister or a member of the executive, because basically, like he did quote correctly, it is the mandate of the House to make the budget and even to appropriate money to various areas and ministries. And therefore, it calls upon us who are in leadership, the chairman, if he almost sounded like a whistleblower. So I don't know, Honorable Speaker, if he has more information, for instance, to those particular committees that are being intimidated or being us to actually pass the budget that has been made by other authorities. And if he had such information, then he should tell us more so that we are either as Parliament able to protect, speak to those chairmen, and so on and so forth. So I also was unable to take his matter with great seriousness because he needed to be more vivid to indicate that this is what's happening here and here. Otherwise, ordinarily, I would want to stand with what he said, that it is this House to appropriate these monies. But Honourable Speaker, as I finish, he needs to give more information if we have such a cases happening, which committees, so that then we can intervene. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Morogara.
Thank you. I apologize that I don't have my card. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, I've listened to the concern raised by the leader of minority, and to a great extent, it is not correct. Because, number one, we know very well that the budget policy statement emanates from the executive. The reason why it emanates from the executive is for the executive to state how much money is available so that Parliament is able to appropriate. Number two, ceilings have to be given because, again, the policy surrounding appropriation of money is by the executive. That is why ceilings are recommended. Once this comes to the House, the purpose of the House and the committees is to look at what has been proposed, and this is why we also do stakeholder engagement, the MDAs, the agencies. They come to us to say, this is the ceiling that has been recommended, but you as a House, you have actually to look at what else we need so that you make appropriate recommendations to the House. For the case of Justice and Legal Affairs, we have about 12 MDAs who come to us. We know we have the policy statement, we have the ceilings, but we are also able to listen. And today we were signing a report whereby we were recommending to Budget and Appropriations that the ceilings given are not sufficient for those MDAs. Where we have to make an alteration, we are making those alterations. But we have not been coerced. We have not been forced by anyone to write these reports in any particular form. Therefore, what he says is not correct unless there are other committees where there has been any such recommendation. So I totally disagree with the statement.
Honorable members, order. There's no debate on this. The Honorable Member for Gunja, the distinguished minority leader, has raised some very serious allegations without an iota of evidence. I would have expected the distinguished member to say, chairman of this and this committee has come and protested of being intimidated. On this and this day, a member of the executive came to railroad the committee to do this and that. No evidence whatsoever. So what the honorable member has said is just in keeping with his role as an opposition leader. He has every right to raise any manner of issues that he wants to keep the House busy. But it is not a matter worth debating. I can assure you, Honorable Wandai, that as long as I'm your speaker, this House cannot and will not be turned into a rubber stamp. And I want to encourage you that in the event you see any such traits, attempts, or even intentions to turn the House into a rubber stamp, the office of your speaker is open to you. And chairman of committees, if any one of you is intimidated, again, the speaker is here to protect you. And the law and the constitution also protects you in the discharge of your duties and responsibilities. So let the matter rest there. The Honorable Wandai has brought absolutely no matter to continue to discuss. Next order. Before we call the next order, honorable members, allow me to recognize a delegation of staff From the United Republic of Tanzania, seated in the Speaker's Gallery, the delegation comprises of 2 members of staff drawn from the Legal Services Division of the National Assembly of Tanzania. They are welcome to observe the proceedings of the National Assembly of Kenya, and on my behalf and your behalf, we welcome them to the House of Parliament. Next.
Order number 8, motion, ratification of the agreement on the establishment of the International Vaccines Institute. Question to be put.
Honorable members, I'll now put the question at order number 8, that this House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Health on its consideration of the agreement on the establishment of the International Vaccine Institute, IVI, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 5th December 2023, and pursuant to the provision of Section 8.4 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act 2012, approves the ratification of the agreement on the establishment of the International Vaccine Initiative, IVI. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements for the national government, ministries, departments, and agencies for the financial year 2020-2021. Resumption of debate.
Who was on the floor? Okay. There was nobody on the floor, and I'm told there is an amendment which I approved to be moved by the Honorable Mwengi Mutuse. Thereafter, and you know, the amendment will have to be debated and voted on. If it is procedural and agreed by the committee, we can, after moving and seconding, we can put the proposal and put the question so that we go to the main report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are moving an amendment of our report that was tabled before this House on the Thursday, 30th of November 2023. And if you allow, before I move the amendment, just to appraise members of this House, is that the report that we tabled indicated that the total, a figure that after scrutiny we realized that it was erroneous in terms of the total shareable revenue. And as you know, Mr. Speaker, public accounts reports serve not only accountability purposes, but they are also under Article 2 or 3 of the Constitution, sub-Article 3, the basis on which the national and county governments share revenue at the start of the financial year for budgeting purposes. For clarity, Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Mutuse.
Yes, just to read.
You are debating.
No, I just wanted to appraise members so that I read.
You don't have to move your amendment.
Thank you. With the guidance of the Speaker, I now read. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Chairman, the Honorable Badi, notice is given that the Chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee wishes to move the following amendment to the report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the Auditor General's report on the accounts of the financial year 2020-2021 by deleting paragraph 30 under the general observations and recommendations on page 20 of the report and substituting therefore with the following. Statement on audited accounts of revenue for the period ending 30th June 2021. During the 2020-2021 financial year, total revenue recorded under various revenue statements as received by the national government amounted to Kenya shillings 1,713,642,981,513 shillings, representing a decrease of Kenya shillings 17,349,712 and 351 shillings, or about 1% when compared to actual collections of 730, 992, 693, 894 Kenya shillings, realized in the 2019-2020 financial year, as tabulated in the table that is part of this motion, and whose source is the Kenya National Audit Office. Mr. Speaker, the total revenue of Kenya shillings 1,713,642,981 and 513 shillings for the year 2020-2021 financial year, comprised of Kenya shillings 1,570,562,945,014 shillings as shareable revenue, Kenya shillings 56,238,304,456 shillings as receipts from government investments and public enterprises, and Kenya shillings 86,841,732,043 shillings relating to development revenue. However, the total shareable revenue of Kenya shillings 1,570,562,945,014 shillings reported in the 2020-2021 financial year differs by Kenya shillings 7,472,473,978 shillings, with the revenue receipts of Kenya shillings 1,578,035,418,902 shillings in the preceding financial year of 2019-2020. Mr. Speaker, therefore, the committee recommends that the total national collected revenue amounted to Kenya shillings 1,570,562,945,014 shillings, and which forms the basis of sharing of revenue between the national and county governments as contemplated in Article 203, Sub-Article 3 of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, I move, and I request the Honorable Aundo to second.
Who is your seconder? Okay, there you are. Honorable Member for Funyula.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to second the amendment, the motion as presented on the floor of the House by my colleague, Honorable Mutuse. And I want to draw the attention of the people of Kenya that under Article 2033, it indicates clearly that the shareable revenue will be based on the recent approved national accounts by the National Assembly. So it's critically important that once this motion is passed and the report is adopted, the next line of sharing will be based on these audited accounts. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I second.
Honorable members, I now propose the amendment that the motion be amended by deleting paragraph 30 under the general observations and recommendations on page 20 of the report and substituting it as moved by the Honorable Mutuse. Yes, Honorable Badi.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thought maybe I would take a minute just to make it simpler. I know my colleague, Honorable Mutuse, who is a renowned lawyer in this country, has done justice to this amendment, and Honorable Undo, who is also my diligent member of the committee. But allow me just to maybe explain to members in a few words what this amendment seeks to do. Madam Speaker, you know we are required by the Constitution to every year divide revenue between national and county governments. and that should be based on ordinary revenue collected, audited, and approved. So the last audited and approved accounts are the ones that is used. So that is why we are passing this motion to make that revenue available. Now, what is it that was wrong in the report, which we are trying to correct? Madam Speaker, and this is something that we engaged our minds to, we realize that almost all the years we have been making this mistake. So the mistake is this, that under non-tax revenues, we have been double accounting for the same amount, that we have been including the same amount twice in our reports, and we were almost doing the same mistake. So what is this? I will explain. Loan, you know, sometimes state corporations take loans. And when they take loans from the government. The government gives state corporations loans. They pay back to the national government that loan together with interest. When that money is received, it's usually paid to an entity which is called Government Investment and Public Enterprises. If you like, you can call it GPE. Now, once that money is received by Government Investment and Public Enterprises, it is recorded as income or revenue. Then when that money is transferred in full to the exchequer, it is again recorded as income. So the same amount is recorded as income when it is received by this government and investment and public enterprises, and when they transfer the money to the exchequer, it is again recorded. So what we are doing with this amendment, Madam Speaker, is very simple. We are removing this double entry so that we don't inflate government ordinary revenue. It is to the tune of 56 billion, so that we have the correct amount which is received by government to be used as the amount for sharing our revenue vertically between the national and the county government. So that is the essence of this amendment, Madam Speaker. I hope I have been a little clearer to the members. Thank you, and I support.
Honorable members, before we continue with the contributions, allow me to recognize seated in the public gallery, Bishop Alexander Muge Girls School from Kwanza constituency in Trans Nzoia County. The Honorable Member for Kwanza, Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi, I'll allow you to contribute to this debate as you welcome the school from your constituency.
Madam Speaker, asante sana. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I take this opportunity to welcome the school, which is in my constituency. And as you can see, those who have come, please welcome to the sitting. This is where we are. This is where we make rules. And I hope and pray that you will also admire. And one of you may be a member of parliament in the future. So I want to, on the behalf of the Speaker, on the behalf of the members of parliament, to welcome you to this sitting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Navakolo, Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe. Card is still there. Okay. Okay. The Honorable Member for Saboti, Caleb Luyai. He seconded, okay. If you've spoken, you can pull out your card. The Honorable Adan Haji, Member for Mandera East. He's pulled out his card. Okay, it seems that on this particular proposed amendment, maybe I can just put the question. Honorable members, I now put the question that the amendment I now put the question that the motion be amended by deleting paragraph 30 under the general observations and recommendations on page 20 of the report and substituting it as moved by the Honorable Mutuse. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, we can proceed now to debate the motion as amended. We can resume debate of the motion as amended. The Honorable Victor Koech of Chebalungu constituency.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Having looked around and seeing the mood of this House under our Standing Order number 95, I hereby would request that the mover be called to reply.
Thank you. Where is the mover may reply? Who is the mover? Oh.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in replying, I don't want to say much because actually when I was moving my motion, I took a lot of time. I actually took close to 1 hour moving this motion, and I want to just take this opportunity to thank members of this House who have contributed to this motion, even those who didn't have opportunity to contribute, that your contributions are highly appreciated. And I listened, I sat here through that evening, that was Thursday evening. A number of members expressed their displeasure with budgetary process in this country and the way we misuse budgets. And I think it is important that this House takes note of that because we are budget-making institution. We shouldn't be crying, we shouldn't be complaining because we are complaining to ourselves. Something else that I wanted to also talk about is regarding one of the members talked about signing of contracts. Signing of contracts, the commercial contracts, the State Department is involved. Financial contracts is exclusively done by Treasury. But Madam Speaker, you'll agree with me that we have had challenges with the way contracts are executed in this country, where we even go ahead to put into the contracts some provisions which make this country lose a lot of money, where you put that contractors, if there's delay in payment, they will be paid 3% above central bank rates. That is completely unrealistic. Sometimes we even sign contracts for projects and commit government, yet we have not even acquired land. So this committee, Public Accounts Committee, Madam Speaker, has already recommended that Office of the Attorney General, which is the legal government advisor, should be involved in execution of in signing of contracts. There is no reason why financial contracts are only signed with the involvement of Treasury, yet we have a full department, full legal department, headed by Attorney General, State Council, and all lawyers and legal staff that we have. Finally, Madam Speaker, we have already asked, Madam Speaker, that we strengthen the Office of the Auditor General. That is something that I want to repeat because members spoke to it. If we want prudent financial management and usage of taxpayers' money in this country in a way that is going to ensure value for money, efficiency and effectiveness, then we must, at a minimum, enhance not just the budget of the Office of the Auditor General, but even make sure that we automate that office so that we get real-time audit reports. Madam Speaker, I said finally, but very finally, one of us actually spoke to the idea that, or brought an idea that he expected more scandals to be unearthed. You know, Madam Speaker, I think members, we need to appreciate that Public Accounts Committee does not operate in a vacuum. We actually examine accounts as presented to us by the Auditor General. So if the Auditor General has not brought those so-called earth-shaking scandals, we can't manufacture them. But I would tell you, if you read this report keenly, you will see that there are a lot of financial irregularities, which many of them we have recommended that Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission must investigate. What is important from our perspective as Public Accounts Committee is not to chase and look for thieves. We are looking at the system and reviewing it so that we deter theft going forward. That is actually the main responsibility of an oversight committee, not to look for where people have stolen money, not to be vindictive. That is not our role. But if we find people have stolen money, then we are objective and we must make sure that we recommend their prosecution. And we have done so in our report. Madam Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to reply.
Honorable Malema, what is it?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise on Standing Order number 53, subsection 3, that the putting of the question on this matter be deferred until a later date.
All right, I think that's acceptable. Let's move to the next order. Thank you, Honorable Mbaka.
Order number 10, motion, reports of the Auditor General on 23 non-compliant state corporations. Resumption of debate.
I can be told from the records that Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe was moving, and you have a balance of 40 minutes. 20 minutes? 40 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker,
thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, let me join my colleagues who have spoken before me in congratulating the Standing Committee on Energy, led by my friend, my brother, Senator Matinga, on coming up with a fairly comprehensive report on the inquiry into the high cost of electricity in the country. As Speaker, I will make very brief and targeted remarks on this report, as I declare from the onset that I do support the report. The Speaker, my first comment is on the recommendations of the committee. Recommendation number 1, listed as 206, that within 14 days after adoption by the Senate, the Ministry of Energy should disclose the full entities, beneficial owners of IPPs, including companies listed as shareholders. Mr. Speaker, it is okay to make a disclosure on the people that own these IPPs, the companies that own these IPPs. But, Mr. Speaker, that disclosure on its own does not help a lot in bringing down the cost of electricity. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't matter whether it is Mr. X or Company Y that owns an IPP, if the final cost of the product is beyond the reach of the consumers. As Speaker, I was perusing through the the report, and there's a recommendation in the report that says that KPLC should get into agreements with IPPs that are able to give fair pricing of their products when certain thresholds are met. The Speaker, my view on IPPs, and I know this is the view of a lot of people, is in fact we should be looking for a way of terminating all deals with all IPPs. The Speaker, it should never be lost on us that Kenya Power is perhaps, apart from Kenya Airways maybe, but Kenya Power is perhaps the only existing mega monopoly in this country, producing power to every consumer of electricity in every corner of this country. Why Kenya Power gets into losses, Mr. Speaker? Why Kenya Power is unable to produce enough when they are doing it on their own without competition? The Speaker, is something you really can never understand. And so instead of getting into deals with IPPs, can Kenya Power invest in efficiency? The Speaker, it's almost laughable for us as a nation to be talking about venturing into nuclear energy, a delicate but clean energy. If we are unable to handle the traditional ways of producing electricity for our people, how can we even dream of going the nuclear way? So, the Speaker, on that issue of disclosure, yes, it's okay to do the disclosure, but disclosure for what? The Speaker, let's disclose, but let us begin a process of terminating contracts with IPPs. And even the Speaker, then it becomes evident that Kenya Power cannot be profitable. Then we kill the monopoly and we register competition. We register other people, other companies, other entities to produce electricity for the country. The Speaker, it will also be remembered that this conversation around Kenya Power and their ability or inability to produce electricity for affordable electricity for consumers in this country. The Speaker, in Article 204 of our Constitution, that establishes the Equalization Fund. The drafters of our Constitution have realized that access to affordable electricity is a basic requirement for development. And in it they are saying that the Equalization Fund should go into basic services, including electricity, roads, water, and health. So central, Mr. Speaker, is electricity to the development of any area in this country that, Mr. Speaker, it should bother us as a House that today we are discussing lack of access to affordable electricity when we have a monopoly that has been operating for so long. The Speaker, on my last contribution, still on the recommendation by the committee, and I want Senator Matinga to hear this. I see Senator Veronica is distracting Senator Matinga. The Speaker, the recommendation, Senator Matinga, in 226, where you're saying, where applicable, KPLC should utilize restricted tendering. I oppose that recommendation for a reason. The Speaker, the reason why we do open tendering, and we should encourage open tendering for almost the procurement of every public good, is so that people can get value for money. Now, when you start talking about restricted tendering for KPLC, which is already enjoying a monopoly, then you are compromising the principle of value for money. And I would say, instead of pushing for restricted tendering for KPLC, why can't you again push for investment in efficiency within KPLC and all the departments? So, Mr. Speaker, we don't have a situation where we procure over 4,000 transformers and almost all of them at connection blow up. Mr. Speaker, the issue of procurement, and especially the procurement of transformers within KPLC, is a matter that I really would have wanted to see direct recommendations on this report. Because, Mr. Speaker, this country has been treated to a lot of games when it comes to the procurement of transformers within the bigger body of KPLC, whether it's like a truck or Relic or whoever it is that is procuring these transformers. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I am in support generally of the report, but those issues need to be looked into. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this report by the Energy Committee. Honorable Speaker, I'm a member of the committee and also the Vice Chair. Honorable Speaker, we took a lot of time to do this inquiry because if you remember last year there was an outcry about the cost of living, the cost of power in the country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, between 1999 and 2008, 2009, when there was serious blackout in the country, the government then, in its own wisdom, decided to engage IPPs to supplement in generation of electricity in the country, Honorable Speaker. And we suspect, Honorable Speaker, that the then civil servants, especially those who were within the Ministry of Energy, colluded with the IPPs to sign contracts, to sign agreements, Honorable Speaker, that are very difficult to terminate. In fact, most of the members who have spoken, they said we need to terminate the contracts, the agreements. Honorable Speaker, we went through all the agreements that were signed, and there is no exit clause, Honorable Speaker, because this was basically like a public-private partnership to generate power, and they had fixed time of contracts where they were supposed to generate power. In fact, most of them, Honorable Speaker, are between 20 and 25 years. And within those 20, 25 years, there is nothing you can do with the agreements because the IPPs will have gotten loans from offshore and invested, and the country could not terminate. If you terminate, basically you pay the remainder of the time of the agreement, Honorable Speaker. That's why they are very expensive, and all these loans were denominated either in euros or in dollars. That is why any slight change in the currency, weakening of our currency, Honorable Speaker, it becomes very expensive to supply power to Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, one of the reasons why the first recommendation where we said within 14 days, Honorable Speaker, we need to know the beneficiaries or the owners of these particular companies, Honorable Speaker, it is because we want to know those who are culpable, those who were, if those were in power, those who were in offices that particular time, Honorable Speaker, then the recommendation on EACC and DCI coming in will now be effected, Honorable Speaker, because we suspect some of the PSs then, or even ministers that time, Honorable Speaker, decided to form companies offshore and engage a few maybe international partners to please Kenyans, Honorable Speaker. That is, it is good to inform members so that they know. That is one of the reasons why we want to know who are the real owners, who are the beneficial owners of these particular companies, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we've also made a recommendation that will easily reduce the cost of power. There are three main lines, Honorable Speaker, Darkwell, Ortum, Kitale. Basically, it will sort out that part, the western part of Kenya, because it will stabilize the grid and it will also reduce the cost of power, because the thermal units within that area, Honorable Speaker, could be retired because they are using, Kenya Power has told us they use thermal power to do what they call uptake, picking power, Honorable Speaker. So and these are not expensive lines, and the ministry and Ketraco have promised us before some of these lines, they said by December last year, others by May this year, will have been completed, Honorable Speaker. And as a committee, we are following up very closely to ensure resources are allocated so that these lines are completed. The line, Honorable Speaker, between Narok and Bomet will open that region, and there is very expensive thermal power in Moroni that when this line of Bomet Narok is completed, the thermal power plant by Kenshin that is in Moroni, Honorable Speaker, will be retired, and it will reduce the cost of power, because that's an expensive power. I mean, the costing close to about 54 cents, Honorable Speaker, as compared with renewable energy that we can get at 4 cents, 7 cents, and up to around 9 cents, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, my colleagues have talked about the thermal power. We have actually engaged, and we have, luckily, most of the thermal plants, the years remaining are less than 10, some 5, some 4. And we have given proposals also for this particular engagement between Kenya Power and also the IPPs who are still generating using thermal to convert to LNG, Honorable Speaker, so that basically they can be given an additional few years and reduce the cost of power to our people, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, for a few years ago, also on the same thermal plants, Honorable Speaker, we are told Kenya Power, they're the ones who approve the purchase of HF4. HF4 is basically every fuel, Honorable Speaker, oil. So, Honorable Speaker, these particular IPPs, Kenya Power demands that they all stock that can stay as close as 2 years, which is very expensive for the IPPs to store HF4 for 2 years. And then we have given a recommendation that what they can do, convert into LNG. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, Kenya Power to discuss with these IPPs and maybe buy bulk. You know, when you buy bulk, the economics of scale will crop in, and that the cost of HF4 is going to reduce. And when the cost of HF4 reduces, because it's one of the costs that is billed to the customer, then basically the cost of power should come down, and our people can benefit, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we also have an issue, what members have also said on Whaley. Honorable Speaker, you will be told, while SGR was being built, one person will be paid 50 million for an acre on that way leave of SGR. Another person next, my plot is following Sige's plot, and he will be paid maybe 20 million, and I'll be paid 50 million. Another person 100 million. So we need to ensure the Land Value Index Act that was passed is implemented completely, Honorable Speaker, so that we don't have speculators who go and buy land and collude with the National Land Commission and basically inflate prices. You can imagine a place like Marsabit, you will be told an acre of land is 50 million. Where on earth will you buy a land for 50 million in that part of the country? This is basically corruption, and we need to rein on these speculators who want to steal from Kenyans, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, these three lines, the one we've also discussed with Ketraco, Honorable Speaker, the Mariakani substation, we have talked about it for a long time. We want Ministry of Energy to allocate resources, complete that substation, so that Kenyans in that part of the country can enjoy the green energy, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, There are many things that we have said here, and we want to promise as a committee, Honorable Speaker, that after adoption of these reports, we will pursue, and I agree with the leader majority that there is no need for an implementation committee, Honorable Speaker. The departmental committee or the standing committee are the ones with knowledge. They have the memory of what they have done, and will pursue. Basically, within 14 days, if some of these things are not done, and 60 days, others 90 days, others 60 days, it will be upon us as a committee to write to the ministry and follow up. Otherwise, if we give to another committee, they'll struggle to follow up, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I urge our members to support this report, and we will ensure that we pursue the ministry, we pursue KBLC, so that the cost of power, in fact, we had expected this report to have been passed last year, so that by December last year, the cost of power should have come down. But because we did not pass it, I believe with the passage of this week, we will now embark on monitoring and ensuring that Kenya Power basically and the ministry follow all these things so that our people can benefit, because we are struggling. I mean, the cost of power it is cheaper to import power from Ethiopia, and we have capacity to produce 10,000 megawatts from geothermal. There are those who have blocks. They have been allocated blocks as speculators, and they have not generated. So basically, we have also recommended that the Ministry of Energy terminate all licenses that have been given out to people who have overstayed and they do not have done anything on those particular blocks, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, on IBRA, we will pursue. I know some of the challenges that they tell us when we meet them is some of the regulations have stayed for too long at the Attorney General's office, and we will also be writing to AGs to ensure that regulations that have been sent there, they need to release them quickly. Because I remember even in the last Parliament, Honorable Speaker, we had close to 30 regulations by Communication Authority of Kenya that lied in that Attorney General's office without being released. So maybe we just need to give timelines as part of amendment of this report, as it's been said by members. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I request and I urge my colleagues, please assist us to pass this report, and we will ensure soon the cost of power will come down. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Morgan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to also make my contribution to this report. Mr. Speaker, I've really no hesitation in supporting this report because I'm adversely affected, Mr. Speaker, by the inefficiencies of power generation. Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by thanking the chair of this committee, Wahome Wamatinga, and declare my interest, Mr. Speaker, that once this report is fully implemented, I'll be the first beneficiary, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I and Senator Cheruiyot get power from one line with the substation in Chemosit. And Mr. Speaker, that one line with 132,000 kVA supplies 5 counties. Supplies the county of Kericho, supplies the county of Nyamira, supplies the county of Kisii, the county of Migori, and the county of Homa Bay, Mr. Speaker. And oftentimes, Mr. Speaker, when there is a lot of demand for electricity, especially in the evening, you get what they call power loading. And we are forced to be switched off because this one line cannot supply all consumers in those counties. So I suspect, Mr. Speaker, that if Senator Cheruiyot is in Kericho, he tells Kenya Power to switch off people of Nyamira in the evening. So I hope that recommendation number 1, Mr. Speaker, at number 3, that is recommending that the 132 kV Narok-Bomet line be completed within the next 1 year, should be implemented as soon as yesterday. Because, Mr. Speaker, this is the line that will reduce the overload from those 5 counties. Hopefully, Mr. Speaker, will be separated from Kericho, will be separated from maybe Homa Bay, so that we can have enough power to the county of Nyamira. Mr. Speaker, every often, Mr. Speaker, I get complaints from many of the people who live in the county of Nyamira, especially those who reside in the constituency of Borabu, that they get switched off at the peak hours of doing business. Those who have workshops cannot generate enough income every day, Mr. Speaker, because of power outages. So I really hope, Mr. Speaker, that the ministry that participated when the committee was undertaking this exercise will fully partner with the Ketraco geothermal and ensure that these recommendations are implemented. Two, Mr. Speaker, as a country, we need to make some hard decisions, Mr. Speaker. The idea of Kenya Power having monopoly does not serve the interest of this country, Mr. Speaker. This is a matter that has been debated year in, year out, but we have not made hard decisions, Mr. Speaker. And unless we allow competition, and I expected that that recommendation should have been in this report, Senator Kalwale, Senator Mungatana, Senator Kisang, unless we kill monopoly and allow competition, we will always have these problems of high electricity tariffs. And we can learn from other jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker. During the Great Depression in the US in the 1930s, in 1933, President Roosevelt opened up the industry and he allowed for the setting up of Kerio Valley Authority. And one of the tasks of Kerio Valley Authority was to generate affordable power to the people of Kerio Valley. Tennessee Valley, actually, not Kerio Valley. Sorry, I'm not Kerio Valley. Tennessee Valley. And you know, that decision by President Roosevelt increased the customers that were connected to electricity into millions, so to speak. As we speak today, the cheapest power supply to the national grid in the United States of America comes from Tennessee Valley Authority. I mean, that's what we need to do. Because when you bring in competition, you are able to have competitive prices. Because all that we need is cheap power. Members of this committee will be surprised that 200 shillings of unit, if you purchase units worth 200 shillings, you will only get 3.7 units of electricity. And that's extremely costly. That is too expensive. So I urge this committee that has done a very fantastic job to go a step further and have a firm, if this issue is to be implemented, you had a suggestion that we should kill monopoly, open the industry to competition so that we can have cheaper power supplied to our people. On the issues of what the EACC should do on investigations, it is really sad that some of our parastatals, especially Kenya Railways, lost lots and lots of land in prime areas, in Upper Hill, in Parklands area, because people just came and grabbed houses that belonged to Kenya Railways. So this recommendation that you have made for Kenya, for the National Land Commission, to ensure that it works with EACC to recover or to ensure that they protect land that is owned by Kenya Power and Lighting is a very, very good recommendation. And I hope this will be taken seriously. So in brief, so that I don't take a lot of time, this is a very good work. And in conclusion, Kenya Power and Lightning Company, Mr. Speaker, has stolen from Kenyans, literally. You have made a recommendation that the Auditor General should audit KPLC's financial statements and obligations and their billing software. This is actually the most eye-catching recommendation for me, because there was even a case that was filed in court. Orders were given to the effect that Kenya Power and Lightning Company was stealing from Kenyans, but nothing happened. Let's have an audit, an in-depth audit. And if we get that there is evidence that leads to some fraud, deliberate stealing from poor Kenyans in terms of billing, there should be a recommendation that money should be recovered from KPLC and we refund poor Kenyans. Senator Mundigi, there are people from Embu who have been robbed. So this audit by the Auditor General, if there is one thing that you need to ensure that it's fully implemented, it's this suggestion to allow the Auditor General to audit, see the billing, if there was any fraud, if there is money that has been stolen from Kenyans, this should be recovered. This is good work, committee members. We thank you for this, and we hope that this report will not be put to the shelves to gather dust. This good work should see light of the day, and you should report back to us and tell us that the work that was done by a committee headed by Senator of Nyeri has brought some smiles to the faces of Kenyans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Senators, we have visiting students from Egerton University in Nakuru County. Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the public gallery this afternoon visiting students from Egerton University in Nakuru County. The delegation comprises 6 students who are in the Senate for a one-day academic visit. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Honorable Senators, it is also important to note that I was also a student at the university, so I really want also to welcome them to the Senate. I'm saying I'm a former student of this important university. So, Senator Tavida, Kiroche,
Let me take also this opportunity to welcome the students from Egerton University, from Nakuru County. Happy to have you here today. I wish you all the best, and whatever you learn from here, may it help you achieve what you're looking for. Thank you so much for visiting in the Senate. We are so proud. This is the upper house. You learn a lot, and this is where we registrate the laws that are favorable to our people, and especially our people in Nakuru County. When you go home, tell them we are here na tumesimama imara to ensure that all is going well in our counties. Asante, we'll meet when I come down to Nakuru. Asante, thank you.
Yes. Can you take your few minutes to contribute to this motion?
Asante. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. I also stand to congratulate and join the other senators that have spoken before me to congratulate the Committee on Energy on the report on the inquiry into the high cost of electricity in the country. In the manifesto, in the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, one of the manifesto was the industrialization. And I know if the cost of electricity is lowered, we'll ensure that we encourage more investors, local and foreign, to build more industries in our country. So I think this report is a good work done by the committee, and going forward I can see light at the end of the tunnel where electricity will be lowered, and we'll ensure that now we have more industries in our country so that we can create more employment and more wealth for our people. If you look at the report, you can see, Mr. Speaker, sir, according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics Economic Survey of 2023, about 87.5% of all electricity generated in the country is from renewable energy, and 43.6% is from geothermal. We all know geothermal comes from where? It is located in Nakuru County, particularly in Naivasha. So in this report, they should include that Nakuru County should have energy or power before the other parts of the counties at a better cost, at a lower cost than any other part of the country. Power should be whatever equally, because you look at Narok, they are enjoying their Masai Mara. If you look at the Turkana, they're enjoying the oil. So even Nakuru County should enjoy, and the power, the geothermal comes from the Nakuru County. The national government gets, earns 15 billion from that geothermal. So if you look at the way the Constitution says 25% should remain at the county, we should be talking of 3.75 billion should be our own source revenue in addition to what we collect. So I think that's what we'll be pushing for, and in this report, that's what we should have to ensure that we don't leave Nakuru County just like that, to know that they are the ones who contribute 50% of the power that we use in the whole of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, sir, mine is only to congratulate the committee and to tell them to ensure that they put those points that we are adding in additional of what we are saying, so that everybody feels well represented, and it should not feel as if they have been left out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Senator Tabitha. Senator Sifuna Edwin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you are aware, I'm a very proud member of the committee that is led by Senator Matinga, and I wanted to calm the nerves of my colleague, the majority leader, that indeed we have serious members on that committee, and some of the concerns that you are raising have been, in fact, addressed in the report. You must have missed a few of those recommendations. We did, in fact, interact with the spectre that you highlighted, of people who are holding contracts for years on end without having done anything on the ground. You will see, Mr. Speaker, at page 56 of the report, recommendation number 217 there, that KPLC issues a 30 days notice of intention to terminate a PPA of one such companies. So, Majority Leader, you should rest assured that, in fact, we interacted with these issues. Even on the question of renegotiation of contracts, you will see there at recommendation number 211, we have given the Ministry of Energy and KPLC time to renegotiate some of the power purchase agreements, and I'll be happy to disclose to you that in fact many of those IPPs are not averse to those renegotiations. We do understand the contractual obligations that we got ourselves into are a bit restrictive in terms of what we can do and how far we can go, but I am happy to report to this House that in fact that is a conversation that all those IPPs are willing to have with us. Mr. Speaker, when we began this conversation, we had one of the hustlers in my office purchase some units of electricity. At that time, they bought units of 100 shillings. And Mr. Speaker, out of the money that was paid, 100 shillings, it is only 49 shillings that went to buying actual power. That tells you that 51 shillings, or 51% of the amount you spend on electricity, goes to taxes and levies. And that is where the conversation began, Mr. Speaker. Out of that 100 shillings, I have told you 49 is the amount that got this hustler 3.9 units of electricity. This is back in 2022. VAT accounted for 12.2 shillings. And Mr. Speaker, the largest component of levies and taxes was that component of the bill titled Fuel Energy Charge, which at that time was at a whopping 28 shillings, out of 100 shillings. So that is where the focus of the committee began, Mr. Speaker. We wanted to understand how can we be able to reduce some of these charges, because in our minds, reducing some of those charges would directly result in the cost of electricity going down. Mr. Speaker, you will see another item there being the forex charge, which was at 6 shillings then. Then there was a charge for EPRA and Water Resource Authority, and then inflation adjustment of 2 shillings and 61 cents. So, Mr. Speaker, when we began this conversation, and I want to report to this House that if you want to know that the energy sector took note of this particular inquiry, after our inquiry began, Kenya Power stopped publishing the bills in the broken down fashion that we used to receive, because then it was easy for Kenyans to focus on where the pain points are. Mr. Speaker, many of my colleagues have spoken to the issues we engaged with, and I would like first to start with the question of transparency. Mr. Speaker, this specter of independent power producers came about in the late 2000s and early 2010s, following the drought that we had that resulted in electricity shortage. And the government then decided that in order to ramp up our capacity, then we need to open up this particular industry to the private sector for us to be able to have other generators coming on board. What we experienced, however, Mr. Speaker, is that the suspicion is there, and I want to repeat, it is a suspicion, that most of these companies are actually owned beneficially by people who were then in the ministry at that particular moment in time, and that they cut themselves some very sweet deals, that some are lasting 20 to 30 years, Mr. Speaker, and it's very difficult for us to wriggle out of them. The most interesting thing, Mr. Speaker, I want to give you the example of all the IPPs we spoke to. If you look at page 11 of the report, Mr. Speaker, there is a company called Triumph Power. Triumph Power is the only one of those IPPs who appeared before us, Mr. Speaker, that is fully owned by Kenyans, and their names are known. And it is also not a coincidence that it is because they are the only ones who are fully owned by Kenyans, and their identities are known, that they are the least dispatched company on our grid. That means they are the ones who Kenya Power buys the least power from. And the report tells you, Mr. Speaker, that the dispatch is at 5% of their generation capacity. So when you look at those two factors, you would know, Mr. Speaker, that transparency is a critical issue in our energy sector. So what did the committee do? And I'm very grateful, Mr. Speaker, that out of the conversation we had, the committee is also supportive of a legislative amendment, a bill that I'm sponsoring myself, to bring transparency, requiring that there be disclosure of beneficial ownership of all the companies who are supplying electricity to Kenyans. And that, in fact, if you do not disclose, then you can't do business with Kenya Power or any other uptaker of electricity. Number two, Mr. Speaker, there is something called capacity charge. And this is why, if you look at the legislative amendment, and when I'm moving that bill, I will explain a bit more, there is a charge for just about every person or every entity that has signed an agreement with Kenya Power. whether those people are selling power to Kenya Power or not. Because this capacity charge is exactly what it says it is. It is for their ability to supply that capacity, that yes, it is there. Even when you're not utilizing it, we have expended resources. You've been told about the loans in this sector being denominated largely in foreign currency. So they have provided that capacity and we have all to pay. Mr. Speaker, if you add just one IPP to the grid today through a power purchase agreement, you will see the cost of electricity going up because of that capacity charge, that you have added extra capacity whether Kenyans are buying power from that particular plant or not. Mr. Speaker, then there is the question of transparency in the purchase of electricity from all these IPPs. As you've been told, a bulk of our production, a bulk of the electricity we produce is from green sources. Those green sources are actually cheaper sources. But at the point of the decision making, when the gentleman called the dispatcher or the lady at Kenya Power is sitting there and he has view of all the power producers in the country, and he says, now I'm going to put Triumph Power online, I'm going to switch off the geothermals, I'm going to put on Lake Turkana wind power. At that particular moment in time, Mr. Speaker, the decision has to be made to avail electricity that is the cheapest to the consumer. Now, that doesn't always happen. We had a conversation with a gentleman from Lake Turkana wind power. Mr. Speaker, would you know that the contract, the IPP, the PPA, the power purchase agreement between Kenya Power and Lake Turkana wind power actually provides for a discount of 50% of the cost of electricity from Lake Turkana wind power if a certain threshold is hit. They sat us in this chamber and they told us that in fact Kenya Power has never utilized that discount that is available for them. In fact, they have said that on many occasions they are curtailed, which is to be told, reduce your production, reduce the amount of power that you're putting onto the grid, because they want to give preference to the expensive thermal sources, which they claim are more stable. These players in this sector, Mr. Speaker, if you speak to them, they will tell you that these stories that you hear from Kenya Power about base load and intermittent suppliers of electricity are all part of a scheme to make sure that Kenyans do not benefit from the cheapest available electricity. So you will see when the bill comes before this House, Mr. Speaker, that we have tried to tie the hands of the dispatcher, that in dispatching electricity, priority must be given to the cheapest sources of electricity, such as Lake Turkana wind power. Mr. Speaker, then there is a question of completion of transmission lines. Some of my colleagues have spoken to this issue, and it appeared to us quite ridiculous that solutions are known. There are straightforward solutions for completion of certain power lines, for instance, the Takwel or Tum to Kitale line that is supposed to evacuate power from not just Takwel, but also some of the projects that have been put there in terms of renewables like solar. Mr. Speaker, now here is my disappointment in going through some of the proposals that have been brought before this House in the budget policy statement. Mr. Speaker, I have here the document that was presented to the Energy Committee. This is the brief of the 2024 budget policy statement in the medium term. Presented to the Senate Energy Committee. Mr. Speaker, there is a very big difference between all the previous budget policy statements in the last few years and the ones for 2024. If you look at the budget policy statements of 2021, I'll give an example. You will see a clear commitment from government to build 3,082 kilometers of additional transmission lines. A specific target is given, even in terms of kilometers of transmission lines to be built. Then you can be able as a House to even follow up and audit. They say they are going to connect an additional 2.4 million new households. That is 2021. But Mr. Speaker, when you look at the language of the budget policy statement this year, you will not get that specifics. You will not be told how many kilometers of transmission line is going to be built and how they are going to be prioritized. So, Mr. Speaker, what we want as a committee to do is that, yes, indeed, we are in a difficult situation as a country. That, in fact, we have signed or gotten ourselves committed to very expensive power purchase agreements. And there is limited options. I heard the majority leader saying there are lawyers in this committee, they should tell us. In fact, my position in that committee during those deliberations, I know as a lawyer that if a contract is unconscionable, you have a right to terminate that contract for being unconscionable. I am convinced that those contracts are unconscionable, and a bold decision needs to be taken. But as I've said, these IPPs are willing to sit down and renegotiate some of those contracts. But for us, we will push for greater transparency in this sector. And one of the things that we have said, because as I told you, Mr. Speaker, most of these contracts have already run 10, 15 years. Some of them are coming to an end. What I want to urge the current administration, and this is something the committee was very clear on, please don't renew some of these agreements, especially the ones that are being run using the heavy fuel oil. Because we had some of the players coming to us and saying, oh, Sifuna, this plant can still produce electricity. It has a few more good years in it. There is no need for you to scrape it. If they are not going to scrape those plants, Mr. Speaker, then we should obtain concessions from them in terms of the pricing of electricity from those plants. But the current administration should be very hesitant to renew any of those contracts, because I personally feel that they are unconscionable. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge my colleagues that when that amendment bill to the Energy Act comes before the House, that they support that amendment. We had opportunity to listen to a few stakeholders because that bill went through public participation. There are people who are saying, oh, the recommendations are not deep enough, that we have not done justice to the issue. But I want people to understand the limitations within which the committee was operating. Because as I said, Mr. Speaker, we have already tied our hands in terms of the duration of those contracts and the prices. Mr. Speaker, also, sitting in this committee is very interesting because you get to know things. Out of the 3 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker, let me get the correct figure. As of now, counties owe Kenya Power 3.5 billion shillings. And out of that 3.5 billion, 2 billion shillings is owed by Nairobi County to Kenya Power. So, Mr. Speaker, when I will stand here another time, trying to argue for greater resources for Nairobi, because we are very unique, by the time you are running a bill of 2 billion shillings on electricity alone, Mr. Speaker, we have very unique needs that other counties like Nyandarua might not be experiencing. So if I ask for a little extra money for Nairobi, because the senator for Nyandarua also enjoys driving around at night with the lights working, he would like that when he's going home, the route to his home is lit. So, Mr. Speaker, allow us in Nairobi to be able to get extra resources to pay off these bills so that they don't remain on our books and continue appearing there as liabilities for this power utility that is Kenya Power. So, Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I thank you and I beg to support this report.
Thank you, Senator Sifuna. Next is Senator Sigei Wakili.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also give my voice to the report by the Energy Committee. Mr. Speaker, from the very onset, I would like to confirm that I support the report by this committee for the obvious reason of the centrality of electricity and the energy within our sectors, both in terms of production or even our households, where, as a matter of fact, without electricity or without power, we are limited in much of what we do. Mr. Speaker, listening to the chairperson of this committee running the House through the recommendations, it indeed confirmed the fact that the sector has certain challenges which, if those recommendations were to be implemented, we will bring down the cost of electricity, we will enhance supply of power or electricity across the country, and by extension, we'll be able to support so many industries, so many households, so many institutions in terms of them being able to do which they are supposed to do at any given time. Of particular interest, Mr. Speaker, is recommendation number 3, which spoke about the completion of several transmission lines, which by doing so, it will support production or rather transmission of power to very specific places. The senator for Nyamira, the Honorable Senator Okongo Mogeni, indicated to this House that one single supply line that is in Chemosit supplies up to 5 or so counties. Actually, it's more than 5 counties. And where there is at any given time certain blackout, it is not because of lack of power, but it's because of the inability of the transmission line to serve all the 5 counties at any particular time. What does that mean? Mr. Speaker, it means therefore that industries, households, or institutions who are going to be denied power at such a time when there is inability for the transmission line to share, we suffer, and in this case, for instance, particular county where I represent is a victim of that blackout or inability of the transmission line to do it in most of the time. And therefore, if the recommendation that has been shared by this committee were going to be implemented, and in this case they have proposed a timeline of 1 year, I am aware that that will serve a lot of the areas which have in most cases been deprived of operations because of inability of the transmission line to serve those areas. The second issue, Mr. Speaker, that I would love also to support the recommendation of the committee is on what everyone else has talked about, the contracts by the power generating or producing IPPs and Kenya Power and Lighting Company. We cannot write a contract, nor can we say these contracts are cast in stone, as the chairman, I think, had indicated earlier on in his laying out of the report. But all, Mr. Speaker, I believe entirely depend on the goodwill that the IPPs and those parties to the contract can engage in. If, as the Honorable Senator for Nairobi has said, these contracts can be renegotiated, it is the only way to exit where the terms of the contract are so unfair and unconscionable to one of the parties. As to whether or not this has taken forever to be done, my guess is as good as that came from the committee because of the interests that are entrenched in the sector. And I believe the proposed recommendations in the proposed amendment to the Energy Act, I believe, as Senator Sifuna is pushing, will enable the House and us to deliberate beyond just the contracts which are existing. I believe such recommendations, when they come before the House, will facilitate an engagement on whether there is also a possibility of disengaging between production or generation of power, distribution, and ultimately the commercialization. Because where there is monopoly, we all know the consequences where there is no competition. The party that produces, the party that distributes, and the party that commercializes it does not feel as much when there is no competition than when we have additional players. And I want to encourage Sifuna that in the proposed amendments which he's seeking, he should consider including an element where there is no monopoly within production lines, within distribution lines, as well as the commercialization aspect of the power. This is the only way with which we can also liberalize the market so that we have the ability to also engage in dealing with pricing of electricity at any given time. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, when we are told that we are experiencing losses of 26% transmission, one is left to wonder how and at what point did we get to over 20% beyond what is globally accepted? Because if it's globally accepted that 6% transmission losses are within the parameters of what is allowable, why and how did we get to 26%? Is this a factor that is normally played by those who are dealing with documentations for purposes of ensuring that they continue with the loot? Is it something that gets into challenges or incidences of poor governance? And is it therefore then a factor that, besides the acknowledgement of the fact that we have got 26% losses on transmission, the committee needs to look beyond that recommendation, where in as much as we are saying this particular committee do not have, or rather when we are told that we need to have an implementation committee, I tend also to believe that the committee that is involved, the Energy Committee, comprising of members who are knowledgeable in the sector, comprising of the members who have been involved beyond just the report writing, but delving into the details and the challenges that the energy sector has experienced, this same team can and are able to ensure that they follow through these recommendations. Those with certain timelines, this particular house, I believe, can have the option to summon the parties relevant to ensure that such recommendations are honored within the timelines given, and those which requires amendments to the law, this is one of those which we say we should support such recommendations, because at the end of the day, we want to push Kenyans to make sure that the cost of electricity is at least affordable and reasonable in the context of the household that we use, in the context of the industrial demands that we require electricity, and above all, of course, the issues that we're saying that takes the cost of electricity high. With all those comments, Mr. Speaker, I support and I congratulate the team headed by the Senator from Nyeri and all the members of the Energy Committee for taking their time to diligently engage the players in the sector to give us such a detailed and elaborate report that I know with the implementation of the proposed recommendations, the cost of electricity will be managed and Kenyans will enjoy the works of this particular committee. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wakiri. Next is Senator Veronica Duarte, Waheti.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to take a moment and support the report that has been brought to the floor of this House by the Energy Committee. And let me join my colleagues in congratulating this team for doing a very good report, and we can definitely tell that they have done a very exhaustive investigation into the issue of the high cost of power within our nation, Mr. Speaker, the high cost of electricity in the country. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, this report and this debate, when Kenyans here, we are debating about the cost of power and the cost of electricity in Kenya, it leaves a very bitter taste in the mouth of many Kenyans because of the experience they have gone through with Kenya Power. Mr. Speaker, if you have an opportunity to speak to the people on the streets or the corporates that are working within the Republic of Kenya, they will tell you of days when they were tormented by power bills that were unreasonable, power bills that could not be explained, power bills that are shifting every day, Mr. Speaker. The same entity, if for instance it's Senate, you'll find a power bill with the same consumption, the same utility, no additional equipment added into the building or appliances. You will find a bill that ranges from, say, 200,000, the following month it comes to 400,000, another month comes to 1 million, without any single explanation from KPLC why they should have such a range of bills within the same unit or within the same entity, Mr. Speaker, and without any additional gadgets that are utilizing the power. So it's been a disaster and a heavy menace for the Kenyans. A very sad story, Mr. Speaker, because out of this irrationality of the power bills, many people have lost their upkeep, Mr. Speaker. Many people have lost their businesses, Mr. Speaker. Businesses have been shut. People have been unable to sustain power, Mr. Speaker. If somebody loses their job, I can assure you they cannot sustain paying power bills within their homesteads, Mr. Speaker, because that bill will be in the zone of 20, 30,000 within a month, just one item, Mr. Speaker, in their budget. So it's been a very sad story within our nation. And Mr. Speaker, the fact that KPLC has had a monopoly has not even helped the story, Mr. Speaker. The kind of control that they have had over this power, Mr. Speaker, has made it possible for KPLC to behave as though no one else will ever enter into this field of energy, Mr. Speaker, or offering power to Kenyans. Unfortunately, it reminds me of Kenya Airways, Mr. Speaker. These two, I have been unable to rationalize how they behave, the management behavior, and what they are doing with the resources that Kenyans have bestowed upon them, Mr. Speaker. But today we are not discussing Kenya Airways, so it will come in another day, because they have unique characteristics which are almost equivalent, Mr. Speaker, because of a level of monopoly that they enjoy, which I think they should cease to receive any protection, Mr. Speaker. I'm looking at some of the failures that we have had at management level, Mr. Speaker. For instance, if I look at the report in page Roman 8 of this report, I'm looking at Ketraco having been designated as the systems operator since 2021, and this has not even been implemented, Mr. Speaker, in spite of the existence of a Gazette Notice number 155 dated 21st December 2021. Where does responsibility lie? Why is there dragging of feet when it comes to implementation of that Gazette Notice? There are things that are capable of being done. And this committee, the Energy Committee, which I commend, led by Senator from Nyeri, Senator Wahome, Mr. Speaker, is written in very simple language. And I must commend that committee and commend the many other committees in this Senate and in Kenya that write very good reports. In fact, if you want the best reports maybe world over, it should come from a Kenyan system. The problem we have, Mr. Speaker, is when it comes to reading that report and implementing, Mr. Speaker. We need to hold this committee responsible to ensure that they develop a tracker for implementation, an implementation matrix for this report. Because I have seen the committee went out of its way to even give a timeline within which this implementation should happen for all the recommendations they have given. Mr. Speaker, if this was to be implemented, we would finally sort out a very big aspect of what we are crying about in Kenya on the cost of living. Because the cost of power is driving the cost of living high for everyone in the Republic, Mr. Speaker. So if this committee and Senate itself at the Secretariat level can ensure that the commitment that is in this report, once it's adopted, there is a tracker for implementation, then we can see hope on sight. We can see something to look up to. We can see light at the end of tunnel. If we can manage to finally say KPLC, even before it gets competitors in the market, has managed to tame the power bills for all the Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. And though this report is a long report with many pages, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, this report begins and ends with this question of independent power producers. It is not a big story. In fact, we don't need to read the whole of this report. Kenyans do not need to use their energy or effort to read through this report. That energy can be utilized by those who have been enjoined to perform or implement what the government requires them to implement or what the Constitution requires them to implement. It can be read by the KPLC and the Minister for Energy. For the Kenyans, the question this Senate needs to sort out is these independent power producers. I have mused myself listening to my colleagues talking about these contracts that were signed that have bound a whole nation into a bondage that we appear as though we cannot move out of. Mr. Speaker, I beg to differ with many of the views that have been fronted here today, and to say that if a contract is signed on behalf of the public, and that contract has an element of illegality, that contract should be voided by even the court. And one other thing, Mr. Speaker, when a contract has a public interest aspect within the components of the terms that are in that contract, then any party who is willing to be bound by that contract must also accept to be bound by the fact that if that contract is being performed in Kenya, there is something called the Constitution of Kenya, which binds public officers, state officers, entities to be bound by the terms and the obligations that are set out under the Constitution of Kenya. And what am I trying to say? That indeed, these contracts, Mr. Speaker, there is an exit. If there was no exit clause here, the fact that it has an illegality, an unfairness that binds Mwananchi, the Wanjikos in Kenya, who did not sit to sign these contracts, yet they are the ones who are paying these bills, Mr. Speaker, it means that there is an exit. And the exit is this. If it is illegal, if it is void ab initio, Mr. Speaker, it should be declared as such and a revision discussed, Mr. Speaker. And one question I'm asking myself, who are these owners? Who are these faces behind the independent power producers, the IPPs? Because when I look at some of the names, these are some of the shareholders are coming from sophisticated destinations. In fact, you should be safer going to a court in London almost when it comes to application of democratic principles, principles of fairness, principles of justice to public interest. You'd almost be safer taking that matter before a court that is in the UK. Mr. Speaker, nothing stops the ministry from exercising diligence to ensure that if the reigning jurisdiction of the contract, the cited jurisdiction within those contracts, Mr. Speaker, if it is cited to be UK or Denmark, nothing stops the ministry or KPLC or any other party who is in this power purchase agreement challenging the illegality, the aspect of the illegality that it has no exit clause. Because you cannot hold a whole nation at ransom, indicating that whether you consume this power or not, you continue to pay for it, and the person who is paying for it could be earning less than $1 within a day, Mr. Speaker. There is no justice or fairness in that argument, Mr. Speaker. So I want to propose to this House that there should actually be an exit. All these power purchase agreements are capable of being actually invalidated, and those terms being discussed again, reviewed, settled within a contract, Mr. Speaker, and getting Kenyans to the pricing of this power in a manner that is competitive and that meets the international standards. This nation would even be willing to be subjected to the international standards of the pricing of power unit, Mr. Speaker. And I speak because for all the time we have had discussions on why the power is being charged so highly in Kenya, the cost of electricity is so high, there is always this feeling of there is nothing we can do it because of the agreements that have bound us for 20 years. Mr. Speaker, we have been witnesses to the fact that even when a law is made within this House or in National Assembly, if that law is unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker, we have seen our courts declaring sections of laws illegal, unconstitutional, and invalidating them, Mr. Speaker. And if a whole act of parliament can be invalidated by court, Mr. Speaker, what would stop a contract from being taken to the very same court for a court to declare whether it means the constitutional threshold of a contract that should bind the public? Because ultimately, when we have public entities entering into contracts with other with suppliers, Mr. Speaker, the suppliers must understand the environment within which that contract has been made. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the report that has been brought to this House. I have looked at the recommendations. It is worrying that the KPLC debt stands close to 39 billion, and they have consistently made sure, Mr. Speaker, if you do not pay your bill within 2 days, they disconnect you. So they are collecting money, Mr. Speaker. They should be able to fund and pay off their debts, Mr. Speaker. The system losses is something that they should be able to handle. Whatever equipment they are using, if the lines are substandard or whatever it is that is causing system losses at 26%, that is something they should address, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've also noted that EPRA has failed to submit 27 regulations.
Just a minute, Senator Veronica.
Yes, and operate.
Your point of order, Senator Chalgi.
Mr. Speaker, maybe understanding order 1 and also 105. Mr. Speaker, I have heard my sister, SG Emeritus Senator Veronica Maina, saying that Parliament has the power, if I didn't get correct, she can correct, has a power to invalidate contracts under the Independent Power Producers Agreement. So my only concern, is it in order to tell the public that Parliament has power to review or cancel or terminate contracts, yet as a senior lawyer or a senior advocate should know that that is the preserve of the courts of law. So maybe I didn't get that correct, but I'm willing to be guided. Is it in order to mislead the public that Parliament can invalidate or cancel or review or terminate contracts of any nature outside IPP, Independent Power Producers Agreement?
It shows that you didn't doubt what you heard. Maybe Senator Veronica can...
I can clarify, because it is clear that Senator Charadige is not paying attention to what I was submitting, Mr. Speaker, and what I was debating, and I would urge him to be concentrating while in Senate, because I said the contract should be subjected to the jurisdictions, to the courts and jurisdictions within which there were which were stipulated within those contracts, Mr. Speaker. A lawyer of my repute would never confuse such a basic issue, Mr. Speaker. And I would wish now to proceed. Mr. Speaker, any contract that has to be invalidated, Mr. Speaker, would have to be taken to a court of competent jurisdiction. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I would urge, Mr. Speaker, that the parties who have signed up the IPPs should now proceed to the relevant institutions to have a review or a revision of the contracts. And finally, also, Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General, who's done a very good job, I watched the report as she appeared before the committee in Parliament, Mr. Speaker, should now do what we call a performance audit in this energy sector. I have noted she has done 10 performance audits in other public entities in Kenya, and she has done over 1,746 audits, Mr. Speaker, in national government. She should now proceed with speed to do a performance audit in the energy sector. Performance audit would entail auditing every aspect of how this power is being managed within the Republic of Kenya. The costing, the contracts, the systems, why we have 26% losses of the power that is coming from generation, Mr. Speaker. Why that power is being lost at 26 against the industry standard of 16%. Let her do this audit, and let this audit be the 11th audit, Mr. Speaker, so that Kenyans can finally have an answer that small businesses can continue to run using Kenya power and using the normal power, Mr. Speaker, without having to take in the cost of putting solar, expensive solar, installation of expensive solar, Mr. Speaker, to avoid and short circuits, having to use the power that is brought through the Kenya Power and Lightning Company. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and with those many remarks, I beg to support.
Senator Joe Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. And I also rise to support this particular statement by the Committee on Energy, led by my friend and neighbor, Senator Matinga. Mr. Speaker, I want to be very brief. Mr. Speaker, the purview of this particular statement was on the cost of power in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, everyone that pays for power, and I believe almost everybody in this House has a meter somewhere, Mr. Speaker, knows that over the last 2 years, the cost of power has shot through the roof, Mr. Speaker. And so this is a matter that concerns all of us. This is a matter that has affected the cost of production in this country. And Mr. Speaker, it has also resulted to high prices of goods and commodities, and therefore a high cost of living, Mr. Speaker. And so this report could not have come at a better time, Mr. Speaker. There are many concerns with Kenya Power, Mr. Speaker. They recently introduced smart meters. And one thing that I find very interesting with these smart meters, Mr. Speaker, is that, of course, the consumer will not know how accurate the readings from these particular meters are, Mr. Speaker. So we may not know as consumers, or consumers may not know whether actually what they are charged is what they have consumed, Mr. Speaker. Before I go to the recommendations, Mr. Speaker, I also want to point out on the other shortfalls or the other things that Kenya Power does that are not very pleasing, Mr. Speaker, especially in this day and age. Currently, Mr. Speaker, there is a big shortage of transformers. There are many people out there pushing us to get to push for transformers for them. This is not something that politicians are supposed to do, but our people come to us out of despair, Mr. Speaker, because some meters that sometimes are vandalized, Mr. Speaker, will take even months before they are replaced. And when you follow up with the Kenya Power, mostly the answer you get is that their meters are out of supply, Mr. Speaker. And this is something that concerns us as representatives of the people. Mr. Speaker, this report has made many recommendations, Mr. Speaker. And most of them have been about, Mr. Speaker, having like a soft landing for these IPPs. We should not, if you look, Mr. Speaker, at some of these recommendations, and I did look at them, Mr. Speaker, that recommendation number 13, that there will be prioritization of these PPAs, of these IPPs, to give priority to those that have a continuous supply with minimum interruptions of the base load, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's like we are trying to fit into the position of IPPs. Because like most of us that have contributed today have said, do we really need these IPPs, Mr. Speaker? Can't Kenya Power enhance its productivity of power? Mr. Speaker, why would we want to continue making some private companies benefit out of the suffering of Kenyans? Why would Kenya Power, a monopoly, still rely on IPPs, Mr. Speaker? Why would Kenya Power not invest in production of power, Mr. Speaker? These are the questions that we have been asking ourselves. Why do we have to use IPPs? Can't we do away with them altogether? Mr. Speaker, another area relating to production of this power is we have traveled to some countries, Mr. Speaker, and you find that they have uninterrupted supply of power. Most of these countries, if you ask, Mr. Speaker, you'll be told it is because they use nuclear power. And that is why their power supply is never interrupted. Mr. Speaker, perhaps it's time we also started asking ourselves through the committee, and I'm happy that Senator Matinga is still in the House, what prevents us from, Mr. Speaker, generating nuclear power? Is it not an option that we can consider depending on the high need for power supply that we have, Mr. Speaker? Why, Mr. Speaker, the other thing that we should be asking ourselves is why Kenya Power continues to be a monopoly. Because, Mr. Speaker, some of us have had an opportunity to apply to be connected to power. One very interesting thing is that sometimes it's like it's consumers or would-be consumers persuading Kenya Power to connect them. Mr. Speaker, if they were going to operate as people or as a company that would even make some profit, they should be pursuing new connections. It should not be the other way around, Mr. Speaker, that sometimes people even look for connection, people even look for some influence to be connected to Kenya Power. So that connectivity, Mr. Speaker, again is low. Is it not time? And I would want to challenge the Committee on Energy to maybe look into the possibility also of maybe licensing, perhaps licensing another power company, so that, Mr. Speaker, you know, when there is competition, Mr. Speaker, efficiency is sure. So I think I want to challenge the committee to look into whether there is a possibility of having another company or other companies, not just one, so that, Mr. Speaker, there can be competition, so that we can also afford our people a variety, Mr. Speaker, because they say variety is the spice of life. So that if I don't feel like being, if I feel like being connected to power by another company, then I have a choice. Why must we continue protecting or doing or giving support to a monopoly, Mr. Speaker, that is not efficient? Kenya Power must convince this country that that it should continue being a monopoly, Mr. Speaker, through efficiency. Let us see top-level efficiency. And so when that happens, then we can be convinced that they should continue being monopolies. But I don't think, Mr. Speaker, that we should allow any particular service provider, especially of an important service like power, Mr. Speaker, continuing being a monopoly. Mr. Speaker, because it's late, let me not be informed by Senator Cheralgei. He can bring out his information during his time, because I know he's asking to speak. Thank you, Senator Cheralgei. Mr. Speaker, there is this particular loan of about 38 billion going to 39 billion that Kenya Power owes, Mr. Speaker. And I'm asking myself as a Kenyan, who has been around to see Kenya Airways being bailed out by government every year? And this is just a company that serves only the chosen few, Mr. Speaker, because if you come from a place like where I come from, not many people fly, Mr. Speaker. I've been wondering, Mr. Speaker, that government has bailed out even Mumia's sugar company. Mr. Speaker, would it not be a bad idea? Would it not be a very good idea if government decided to bail out Kenya Power? Because, Mr. Speaker, I think this would have some other multiplier effects. Because if you bail out Kenya Power, which serves the whole country, then it means, Mr. Speaker, that such a bailout benefits the whole country. Mr. Speaker, this will also bring cost of production down. And, Mr. Speaker, then this will be good for our economy, because the cost of production, once cost of power goes down, cost of production also goes down, Mr. Speaker, and therefore, of course, the returns also rise, Mr. Speaker. So I think I would recommend also a bailing out of Kenya Power, but of course on condition that they exhibit a proper running of the company, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, looking at the recommendation on the acquisition of whale leaves with the aim of reducing challenges associated with delays of installation of power transmission, Mr. Speaker, I think I want to commend the committee, because we know that there are so many consumers Mr. Speaker, that would be willing to be connected to power, but who have not been connected to power because Kenya Power has not been able to obtain well leaves. And Mr. Speaker, sometimes you get some unreasonable landowners, Mr. Speaker. Where I come from, there is a particular landowner that has completely, flatly refused to give way leave to add water to connect a particular section of our people in Murang'a, Mr. Speaker. So where we have such difficult landowners, Mr. Speaker, I think we need to have some very good way of, perhaps we can even come up with a law that if it is a way leave to an important service or a basic service, Mr. Speaker, an essential service, that we have a way of making such people, not without an option of flatly saying no, and only leaving them with the option of seeking compensation for such, Mr. Speaker, because you cannot have one landowner that blocks hundreds and sometimes thousands of people from accessing an important and essential service, Mr. Speaker. And so I want to commend the committee for that particular recommendation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in summary, because I know there are those of my colleagues that still wait on the queue to make their contribution, Mr. Speaker, I think what should inform our decision here, or what we should be following keenly, Mr. Speaker, is, and the committee should look at this possibility, Mr. Speaker, is on how we can do away with IPPs. Because, Mr. Speaker, to privatize such an important service. Mr. Speaker, we should empower Kenya Power. Mr. Speaker, we should see to it that Kenya Power operates efficiently, Mr. Speaker, and optimally, so that they produce their own power and supply the same to people, Mr. Speaker, in abundance, because this is a very important service, Mr. Speaker. And because, Mr. Speaker, it's getting late, I think I want to conclude there and say that, and support this committee, but tell them there is still room for improvement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
And they can continue proceeding on their journey. Another thing, Honorable Speaker, is with efficiency, sometimes you find some minor traffic offenses, you're only required to pay 1,000 shillings. But how much paper has been consumed, how much time has been consumed for the person to finally get convicted in court on whatever offense that they had committed? Again, Honorable Speaker, there's the convenience. It is easy for one to be told what their traffic offense is, told to pay online, and immediately proceeds on their journey, Honorable Speaker. Again, Honorable Speaker, it is good that we have accuracy, because many times we find ourselves on the highway, depending on how you negotiate with the traffic officer, they could increase your charges or lower them depending on the conversation. So with technology, we can be sure of accuracy on whatever charges one has, and that will actually be a good way of us maintaining our law and order. Finally, Honorable Speaker, I support technology because it's going to help us on data analysis. Data analysis which may help us understand at what time do people overspeed, at what time do people cause traffic offenses on the road, and that could help us towards us planning better as a country and even for our roads. The second one, Honorable Speaker, I support the Sexual Offences Act 2006, which actually proposes that we have a register for convicted sexual offenders. Honorable Speaker, I support this because, number one, we can ensure public safety. In a neighborhood where people know a person is a convicted sexual offender, they would be more careful and actually take care of their children better and even their loved ones. Honorable Speaker, also it would be a way of deterring crime, because anybody knowing that person is a convicted offender would actually mention to the authorities, and the authorities would monitor such people better. Again, Honorable Speaker, on justice and accountability, it would be good that in case the person is a repeat offender, the justice system would actually execute an even harsher punishment on the person, ensuring that these people are known and put on record. Finally, Honorable Speaker, having a register of convicted sexual offenders would be a form of justice to victims, Honorable Speaker, because at least a victim knows the person would not have to do the same to somebody else because they stand on record known for the crime that they committed. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support.
The Honorable Moses Kirima.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I hereby support the Miscellaneous Amendment Act, which is before, number 2, which is before this Honorable Court. Taking into account that this bill accounts for a number of issues which are so beneficial to the public. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look at the Value Handling Tax Act of 2013, number 35 of 2013, it is letting the ethanol, among other issues like the gas meters. It says that the bill proposes to amend the Value Handling Tax Act number 2013 to declassify the supply of gas meters of tariffs number 9028 and the supply of denatured ethanol.
Order, member. The Honorable Wamuchomba. Honorable Wamuchomba. Order, the Honorable Wamuchomba. You are treating the House with disrespect.
Just crossing.
You are crossing.
From one side to the
Go
other.
all the way, please. No. Bow and come back.
Yes.
Otherwise,
Thank you,
it
Mr.
is
Speaker.
total
Thank you.
disrespect for the House.
The House must be honored.
The House must be honorable. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Then come back. Very good. Proceed, Honorable Member.
Thank you. I hope my 2 minutes, which has been taken when direct Honorable Mujomba, will not be counted. Mr. Speaker, I am saying that it is dangerous the way it is in this amendment when it comes to letting the denatured ethanol of tariff number 2207-2000 as exempt and zero latent respectively. Ethanol is becoming disastrous to the youth of Kenya. Ethanol is used to make simple liquor. Ethanol is the one which is making second generation liquor. It has caused a lot of harm to the poor, to the Azoras in this nation. Ethanol has caused a lot of cry, a lot of injury to those who want just to be quick in getting intoxicated because they cannot afford the right beer. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the way I see it, as if we exempt ethanol and make it zero rated, we are making it available more than the way it is. So this one must be looked carefully as it is this one when it comes to the House to amend the same. This one we must remove the figure zero rated and give it the real taxation as it is supposed. Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look at the Employment Act, whereby it is talking of the Employment Act of 2007, number 11 of 2007. This one is properly in the bill because NIS, it should be included among the other security organs of the government. It has issues which does not need or which does not require to pass through the public service employment bureau as it is supposed. When it comes to the bureau, it's proposed to amend the Act of 2007 and exempt the National Intelligence Service from the application of the Act. This one is properly done because NIS deals with very sensitive matter as it relates to the country's security. And as it is, this one is very proper. But now when it comes to the Traffic Act of 443, all other countries which are called developed countries, they have an issue of how you deal with minor traffic offenses. Because you find that somebody has committed a minor traffic offense like overspeeding without knowledge, sometimes when you're in a hurry, or even crossing to the wrong line, even when it's not even necessary, but you are forced by circumstances, like maybe to avoid an accident or something else like that. And when the traffic officer gets you, he ties you on the road side, or he keep you on the road side for hours and hours when trying to negotiate things which are not there, or even taking you to the police station and even locking you in, instead of beating you direct and avoid a lot of time wasting. So the police, having this amendment as it is now, CAB 403, being amended to incorporate the use of technology, we are going even to avoid what we call corruption of the traffic officers. Because, see now, when you are fined by a machine, technology, and it shows that you are being fined 1,000 shillings, you are going to pay your fine and proceed on your safari. Other than being kept on the road side, the police officer come to negotiate with you and demand that you give him bribe so that you can be left to go free. Go to all other developed countries. This is the kind of nature of which things have been taking place. We have been late about it. We are timely on that amendment, and it shouldn't be as it is, so that at least the country can be able to develop and save time, of which time when it is saved, we also save money. Now, the last one is when it comes to the public holiday. This holiday we have been calling Utamaduni Day as a public holiday has been misused. It has been misused in a way that it does not meet the due requirement of Utamaduni Day. In Kenya, as we speak now, nobody can tell what is supposed to be worn on Utamaduni Day, what is supposed to be done on Utamaduni Day, what is supposed to be done on that Utamaduni Day, so that should not be a public holiday. Less people have the Utamaduni Day depending on their culture and the region which they are in. So when it is proposed that we amend the Public Holidays Act to delete the provisions of Utamaduni Day as a public holiday, that's the most right one. Because even if you come to a common community like Imeru, where we have 9 sub-tribes, the Dharakas of Wakina Murugara, the Kirimas, the other people from Mugembe, we have the same culture, but the Utamaduni is very different. So these people have their own day, and it should not be declared a public holiday. These people set their own culture, or the way they want to have their Utamaduni Day, other than making it a public holiday, generalizing. When you go to Ruolad or Busia, where you have Waundo or somebody else like that, you find that the Utamaduni Day is different from what is supposed to be in Imeru. Less people have their own Utamaduni Day, of which they should not be a public holiday, because it depends on what is being done when. Because like when it comes to initiation, the way we call it Utamaduni Day is very different from the way I see the Maragolis carrying theirs. So this day should not be a public holiday, because when we declare or when we make this country abandoned with Utamaduni Day, with public holidays, sincerely, we are making the country poor. With those few remarks, I thereby support the bill, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Yes, let's have the Honorable Eric Muchani, Chairman, Labour Committee.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I wish to rise to contribute to this bill, the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment Bill, number 2. Honorable Speaker, I wish to support the idea to amend the Traffic Act to incorporate the use of technology in the management of minor traffic offenses. Honorable Speaker, all over the world, now technology is being embraced. And if you go to the developed world, people do not spend all their time on the road dealing with the police officers. What happens in our country, Honorable Speaker, is that the police will want to arrest you, detain you for hours and hours, so that in the process they can extort some money or even exploit the members of the public. But with the use of technology, Honorable Speaker, it will be used as a deterrent measure by the people in this republic, and that people will prefer to pay instant fines when technology is integrated or incorporated. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support so that we can save the amount of time that we spend on our roads with traffic officers, and so that now we can be more productive as a country. Honorable Speaker, I also wish to support the idea of amending the Sexual Offences Act of 2006, which will provide that convicts shall be kept and maintained by the records will be maintained and kept by the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary. Honorable Speaker, this also will act as a deterrent measure because there are those repeat offenders, Honorable Speaker, who will now have to fear that their records will be maintained by the judiciary. And I think this will be a good treatment to them because in my committee, we have been spending a lot of time discussing these issues of sexual offenses in different sectors. And I think, Honorable Speaker, this will be a good move. Honorable Speaker, I have reservations about the value-added tax. The idea to amend the value-added tax to 2013 to reclassify the supply of gas meters of tariff number 9028-1000 and the supply of denatured ethanol of tariff number 2207-2000 as exempt and zero-rated respectively. And Honorable Speaker, this is an area that we would like be clarified because when ethanol is mentioned, Honorable Speaker, some of us get very worried because we are coming from a community where the young people are drowning in the abuse of alcohol and consumption of illicit brew. And I'll confirm to this House, Honorable Speaker, that our young people, many of them, even the very educated, are getting lost. And we are very worried as a community because we are wondering what will happen of our tomorrow when we lose young people to illicit brews. So, Honorable Speaker, we would seek a clarification before we expedite on this bill so that we can be assured that this amendment will not make things worse for young people. And it is just recently, Honorable Speaker, when the courts legalized Moratina. And you see, this came as good news to some quarters. And you see, Honorable Speaker, what our people have been consuming and dying of is not Moratina. It is these illicit brews manufactured on the streets by use of this ethanol. And you see, this is what we are keen on. We do not want that the supply of ethanol made so easy or the sale of ethanol made so easy such that it is available for the people who want to kill our young people through the sale of this illicit brew. So with those comments, Honorable Speaker, I support.
The Honorable Edith Nyenze.
Thank you, Speaker. Let me take this opportunity to say that I support the amendment bill and the miscellaneous amendment bill on the Traffic Act, which is trying to amend the bills on minor traffic offenses. I would say that this one is an amendment which has come in time to amend the bill on minor traffic offenses by the introduction of technology. This will actually improve the discipline on our roads and bring orderliness. And this will actually discourage corruption and wastage of time on our roads, as it also helps helps us ensure that there are records which are kept for everyone, and these records would ensure that people don't keep on repeating the same offenses, knowing that the records are in place. And this will bring orderliness and will also deter us from, and the drivers from committing more offenses, knowing that they are being recorded, since there is that technology which would do that. So I support the amendment on CAP 403. The other thing, Speaker, let me take this opportunity to condole with the people, especially 9 people who died along Katangi, Machakos, Kitui, Nairobi Road yesterday when the driver lost control and crashed and more than 9 people died on the spot. So as I support this traffic amendment bill, let me also condole with these families who lost their loved ones. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Very well. The Honorable John Waluke.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me a chance also to support this traffic amendment bill. Mr. Speaker, it is good to have this bill through so that we can save many lives of our people whom we have been losing almost 3,000 people every year. Honorable Speaker, I have been to U.S., I've stayed in the U.S. for some time. Honorable Speaker, police don't chase drivers on the road like what they do here, Mr. Speaker, or retain the driver for hours, keeping either your license, driving license, or they take the car key to keep you for very many hours. Honorable Speaker, what they do, they use mostly the CCTV camera. And people obey the traffic rules. When it is stopped, Honorable Speaker, all the drivers will obey the rules. And the driving there, Mr. Speaker, is very smooth. And there are very many little accidents, not like what we see here every day. When you watch news, Mr. Speaker, you will see that the trailer has killed so many people, or like what we saw yesterday on TV, Honorable Speaker, with a very young child who lost her life. Mr. Speaker, our police here, action should be taken to make sure that police do their jobs, do their work, because they are employed to look after us, the people of Kenya, and our properties. But, Mr. Speaker, for many times, sometimes these accidents in this country are caused even with the police. They can even stop a vehicle and then another vehicle come and hit and even kill people. So, Mr. Speaker, it is good that we must be very serious now with this amendment, traffic act that is on the floor of the House, so that, Mr. Speaker, the new technologies that is coming changes every year, every time. Mr. Speaker, Kenyan police should also follow the rules and order of the Traffic Act, not just to be there to collect either money or to waste somebody's time. Either that person is going to do business, and because he was wrong, either on traffic lights or something. Mr. Speaker, this should be taken very serious. I raise to support this bill and ask the colleagues to pass this bill so that, Mr. Speaker, we can save many lives of our people who are getting lost on accidents. I support the Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
The Honorable Ridikiri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I like to support the various amendments on various sections in this bill. And first, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of the Universities Act 2012, number 42 of 2022. Mr. Speaker, the omission of the national polytechnics and institutions which were not classified as government institutions where there were students who were not sponsored by the government, I think this amendment is addressing that problem. We need to have all the students placed into the various institutions, because we have students who have sponsored and self-sponsored, and they miss placement because the Act does not allow that. So I support this amendment that all students be placed to all government universities and colleges. Mr. Speaker, I also like to support the amendment on the Sexual Offense Act. Mr. Speaker, it's the high time that we keep a coordinated register of all the sexual offenses. Our girls and mothers have been victims of sexual harassment, sexual murders, sexual disadvantages, and there seems to be no central registry of such cases, so that one can commit an offense in Kisumu and run away and commit another one in Meru and run away, because there is no centrality in terms of their cases, even when they appear in court. So this amendment is coming handy, that we have a central registry where all matters that are presented to court within the Republic of Kenya are registered and kept, so that they can be a referral in the case those offenders appear again. Mr. Speaker, I really support the amendment on the usage of technology, and say that we need a whole integrated technology that will bring information for any offense, for any particular drive on the road, that we have a record that is coordinated by the courts, in courts, by the police, NCA, insurance companies, and even financiers. Because that's one of the things that is really missing in this country. You find people committing traffic offenses, and they're given a license. It is withdrawn, and because the other arm of the government is not coordinated with the other one, you find that person is also given a license again. So I think this is amendment of usage of technology by all aspects is coming in handy, and therefore I support. Mr. Speaker, the issue of the VAT, this bill on tax on what is called denatured ethanol. The denatured ethanol is ethanol that has been combined with what is called denaturant, making it undrinkable, making the chemical undrinkable. So that's what the bill is saying. Meaning, it is not the pure ethanol, because the pure ethanol is pure alcohol. So this one is addressing the importation of that industrial chemical called denatured ethanol, which can be used for industrial use. The only problem now is it can be used as a conduit for ethanol, which has been consumed as alcohol, ethanol. So I think this is okay, but we have to be very careful, because in the process of simulating the denatured ethanol, the possibility of also the scrupulous and corrupt people bringing in ethanol is very high. But I really join our brothers and sisters in Kirinyaga, and not only Kirinyaga, even other parts of this country where people have died because of consuming ethanol. So this is not a bad bill, but we need to be very careful when it comes to that act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. We have the Honorable Wilberforce Oundo. Do you want to speak on this? Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I stand to support the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment Bill, number 68 for National Assembly of 2023, but a usual reservation because all my life in the House, I have had reservation about the mischief that normally ends up being achieved through miscellaneous amendment. And I cannot drop that particular position because I sincerely believe that some of the amendments being proposed sometimes go to the depth of the bill to an extent that we need to be treated carefully. Honorable Speaker, it provides several bills to be amended: the Oaths and Statutory Declarations, the Advocates Act, the Notaries Public Act, the Civil Procedure Act, Public Holidays Act. And I want to mention my colleague. Honorable Speaker, 10th October has always been nostalgically Moi Day. Those of us who went to school during Maziwa ya Nyayo, Loyalty Pledge, Tawala Kenya Tawala, we look back with nostalgia. Just because of our typical politics, we are in a hurry to erase the good things that Baba Moi used to give to us. Members would remember how we would joyfully line up the roads in our rural areas with the miniature flags, cheering the motorcade of Baba Moi, and we would rise out of the sunroof of a wonderful Mercedes-Benz and wave to us. And that day, Honorable Speaker, when you go to class the next day, you will get all the marks because you will feel energized. As a society, we should not allow that kind of a feeling to go. It robs us of our history. It robs us of our pride. We need to find a way of bringing it back. The reference to Tamadun Day had some little significance, but I totally agree with my colleague who says, Utamaduni is about our culture. These different communities celebrate their culture on different dates. So having a fixed day does not make sense. And I would, as at the committee of the whole House, I'll give it an attempt to return Moi Day, so that many of us who have a problem with current technology allow us to celebrate our good days, because by then we didn't have PlayStations, there were no TV. The only thing we would entertain ourselves is probably marching like Moi used to march when you'd inspect guards of honor. Honorable Speaker, when we go to the next act being amended, that's the Trustees Perpetual Succession Act, Cap 164, the amendment might look routine, all dealing with the changing with the word pension fund, principle. But then, Honorable Speaker, the various schedules attached to it that are being amended could be substantial. The fees that are being put initiated here could be substantial. And that's why I have argued, such kind of amendments, why not just bring the bill? Subject the bill to public participation on its own, so that those who have got personal interest, the practitioners in the field, can actually give proper input. But as it is, Honorable Chair, Speaker, these kind of amendments, the substance of the matter is going to be changed. So again, I would have to make an amendment so that we delete this, so that let's go for substantive amendments, because there are so many things that have moved on. The National Training Act, I don't want to make a comment, but allow me to just make a comment on the Traffic Act. Honorable Speaker, I remember some years back when in the corporate world, I was late for a meeting to go and make a presentation that was going to give my organization 10 million then. That's around 2010, to about 2007, was not a small amount of money. I got a traffic officer who stopped me, and I was talking on the mobile phone. And he wasted my time. So, Speaker, what I did, and I must confess my sins, because in the period of Lent, I left my key, plus the car, plus the traffic officer. I went away with the key. Left the traffic officer in the car, didn't lock it, opened the windows, hopped into a taxi and left him there because I could not afford to waste that time. So these amendments that are being brought here that will allow electronic payment of fines, accepting the charges and the rest is very progressive. We must support it. It's very progressive. The Sexual Offences Act, Honorable Speaker, I come from a community where cases of child abuse, sexual molestation, both for the boy and the girl child, are becoming rampant. And indeed, many times, the convict or the offender will be released and come and threaten and intimidate the witnesses and the victim. And so for that reason, many of the cases go unreported because, as they say, there's nothing I will do to the offender. It's a good idea that a register is kept by the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary so the information can be shared amongst the various cadres of courts. But, Honorable Speaker, we need to go a bit further. Just like you have your records as Registrar of Persons in terms of ID, birth certificate, and the rest, a convicted sexual offender, that conviction should be part of personal data. So that for any reason, if we get to the way we normally see in the movies, you can just key in and get all the personal data, and some unclassified personal data of a person. A sexual offender, a convicted sexual offender, that information should be considered not personal, should not be considered classified, but should be available. So that when I see a sexual offender probably hovering around children, I should raise an alarm in whichever way we can raise it, so that sexual offender must not be allowed to come close to children especially. So, Honorable Speaker, would also find a way, this new system they want to come up, whether they can cooperate the same. Honorable Speaker, I want to skip the veterinary because I'm not a veterinary doctor. I might not understand exactly what the amendments are all about. But allow me, Honorable Speaker, to speak about the Universities Act. There are two very critical amendments being proposed here. Initially, a former National Polytechnic could be declared a technical university. That's why you found a technical university came out of, I think, the Nairobi Polytechnic, Mombasa, all over. So actually here it's speaking to, is now trying to expand because we are going to declare a number of TVETs or TTI to be technical or national polytechnics. They might not have the requisite infrastructure for them to get to that position. And that's why the amendment under B now expands the requirements or the criteria to include the requisite physical facilities and human resource capacity that are appropriate for technical university. And I hope once this passes, we need to also put in place criteria for nomination as a national polytechnic because of the geopolitics that has pervaded this country. Bumbe TTI, that was established 1974, and it was the foundation stone was laid in 1974 when Professor Julio Jambo was the MP for then Busia Central and opened by Baba Moi in 1977, has never been elevated to National Polytechnic. This, regardless of the fact that it has got all the infrastructure it requires, successive governments, successive donors have given us money to get to a point that we are far much bigger than any other, but it has never been given that status. We keep on to urge the national government, give us that status so that we can eventually encourage the community and we get a technical university status. I agree totally with the provision that the lead government sponsored and making it universal that any child who wants to go to university, whether you are going to private university, you are going to government public university, you must meet some academic qualifications. And who can be better placed to set those academic qualifications? The Central Placement Board. With those very many remarks, Honorable Speaker,
Very well. The Honorable Esther Passaris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the statute law miscellaneous amendment.
Ili kupata uzembe kama sikiza tune yako, bonyeza *812 *498#.
Hakuna baraka yoyote katika uzembe. Uzembe huleta umasikini, upweke na sikia. Umepewa mikono na akili. Ondoka, nenda katafute, kafanye kazi. Na usione kidogo ukakidharau.
Kupata uzembe kama sikiza tune, bonyeza *812 *498#. *812 *498#.
The king in the land of
This February, precious moments with Channel One entail endless hours of warm sentiments.
I really love you.
Oh, Lord. Joy.
Did you get the job, Letty?
Romance.
Oh, babe.
Affection. Passion.
Na hisia zinasobubujika moyoni mwangu.
Family.
Who are those flowers for? Oh, I'm sure they're for Lucia.
Fulfillment.
Oh, this is so sweet.
That's that.
An array of programs specially selected for you to give you and your loved ones the cozy feeling of being at home.
Impressive.
Baby, let me tell you.
The treat is on us.
Are you serious?
Just give us a chance.
Make a date with KBC